Our show's what you know. We'll always watch TV. And if you think we can't, we'll watch more and you'll see. That's why the people of the web believe in Jim from Las Vegas and Jacob from Sweden.
Shows What You Know, your television podcast. We discuss TV, we love TV, we breathe TV. I am Jim from Las Vegas.
I'm Jacob from Sweden, and I eat TV, I shit TV, I eat it again. I'm a whole fucking, I'm a human centipede of TV over here. Welcome to Shows What You Know.
Hell yeah. So today, I mean, we're here. It feels like we're in the doldrums of TV. We were just not too many episodes ago. We had a plethora of TV to go through, but now we're kind of in the in between as we gear up for the fall premieres. So we're gonna play a little game here we call Rapid Fiver. We're gonna get into some TV news, and we're gonna talk about what we've been watching. Jacob, what is Rapid Fire? Rapid Fiver. Sorry.
Oh yeah, you're talking about Rapid Fiver Top 5, the game where we so the way it works is we spin a random topic on a wheel. You want to see the wheel, you go to youtube.com/showswhatyouknow. But no worries, we'll tell you all about it. It's basically different topics like top 5 reality TV shows, top romances in TV, all sorts of nonsense like that. And we spin one at random, and the problem is you usually have to spend hours and hours poring over these lists, or at least I do, because I get very fixated on them. So we're trying to do something fast, rapid fiver, if you will. So that's the gist of it. What do we play some sort of music? It's like 30 seconds or so.
Yeah,
we have to make a whole.
Yeah, I almost didn't have the music.
We could sit in
but
silence
also
if you want.
my spin on it as well. Is I feel that one of the reasons why this is important, and Jacob left this out, is that when people make these lists, they don't make them for themselves. They make them for other people. They make them because, of course, maybe a little bit's for themselves, but you always want to make sure, like, oh, well, let me put this on there so it looks good. Like, I don't want to be the guy that just puts, The Sopranos, Breaking Bad, and all the regulars on my list. I want to make sure I throw in weird stuff to show I'm eclectic, to show that I'm smart. No. This is how you get down to brass tacks. You give yourself 30 seconds, make your top 5, stick to it, live with it, own it, baby.
And a lot of the time, we don't even, it's more like, can you think of 5 things in this genre? And then we panic, and sometimes we don't, and if we don't, the other person gets to pick what goes on their list. So, yeah, and then we go, we forgot Boardwalk Empire existed afterwards, something like that, usually.
Because, the other thing is, with the time frame, you're very frantic. You've only just gotten the topic, and you may forget. You may be frazzled and may forget. Jacob really crumbles under the pressure.
I hate this game. I don't know why we do this. I hate it so much, but yeah, I know. But anyway, let's do it. Let's spin the wheel.
Let's spin the wheel. What do we got here? Whoa! Oh, is this mine?
It's yours.
Oh, my God. Top 5 reality shows, baby. All right. Damn, this is right in my wheelhouse. But let me go ahead. We'll get the music started, and we'll start making our list.
What are reality shows?
Pens down. God damn it. I don't think I even got all 5 either. I don't know.
All right. Well, I have 3, and one of them is just like the only one I could think of. So you get to pick a couple for me, which is great.
All right, perfect.
So top 5 reality television shows. This is your area of expertise. It's funny. It almost landed on animated TV shows, and I was sweating because that's like my jam. But no, it's reality
I would have
TV.
been Yeah, I would have been out of it for. Well, I mean, I guess there's some obvious ones though. Although I guess I have a question, but I don't think this counts. But I still put it down, even though. And I guess this is what I was just complaining about. I feel like I was trying to have a cool answer, but I was trying to do it and within 30 seconds, which messed up my coming up with other answers. Because I guess Nathan For You doesn't really count as a reality show, does it?
Now, that is a good question, Jim. I feel like probably not. If it is, I want it on my list as well.
I'm putting it on my list just because I don't have enough. But even I knew, like, I know, like, there's real people involved, but, like, Nathan clearly has everything else all, like, planned and ready to go. And, I mean, the thing is, I know people could scoff at, top 5 reality shows, but it does open up weird questions as you start getting into, like, reality competition shows. And so, I mean, I could see purists would be like, that doesn't really, like something like a Hell's Kitchen or something like that. They're like, well, I don't know if that necessarily counts. Even which I forgot at the time. I don't have a Ramsey show on my list. So I don't have anything for number 5. So you'll be able to pick something for me. For my number 4, I have Nathan For You, which I know is kind of dumb. It's a cheat, kind of. But what can I do? It's on the list. Now, do you have anything for 5 or 4?
Oh, no. I have a top 3. I ended up with 3.
I have a top 3 as well.
Okay,
all right,
cool. So
my
let
number...
me pick for you. And I know you hate that I do this.
Yeah.
But I know you hate that I do this, but I did Google because I'm like, I need to think of what reality shows exist.
Oh, you're cheating.
I am cheating, but it's always like shooting myself in the foot over here because like all of these reality shows come up that I have no idea what they are, obviously. So I'm just scrolling through trying to find one, and then I frantically search reality TV shows old, trying to find stuff that maybe I would be aware of. But yeah, here's one of the many weird ones that came up for me as that I'll pick for your number 5. Jewish Matchmaking, a Netflix show from 2023. That's now your 5th favorite reality TV show.
I'm putting it as number 5. I don't think we covered that in the rules as well, though. If you can't come up with enough, then the other person gets to pick your slots for those.
Yeah. Do you have a 5 and 4 for me?
Ooh, let me think. Well, now I'm gonna Google. This isn't cheating because we're out of the time limit at this point.
You could also, if you want, instead of being mean, you could just pick ones you like, because they're definitely not going to be on my list, right?
Yeah, I'm just trying to remind myself. You know what? I'll put Kitchen Nightmares for number 5, and the BBC. I'll even be nice and put the BBC one because that is more of an actual reality show than the American one is technically as well, but they definitely amp up the drama, whereas the British version is more like an actual, hey, it's not always just I'm arguing with the people. Like, let's figure out how to make this business better. And a Jersey Shore we'll put as number 4.
solid choices both. All right, I'll give you what's a good one on here? Oh no, this one's already gonna be on there. I know that one's on there. I don't know. Let's go with this. I don't know what this is. Hardcore Pawn Shop Show. Right?
Oh, okay.
People love them.
I've never seen it, but yeah, people do love it. All right, so I'll let you sub that in for Nathan For You because that doesn't really count. So I have Jewish
let's get to the
Matchmakers and Hardcore Pawn for my number 5 and number 4.
Great. So let me hear your actual number 3.
My number 3 is The Real World. I feel like at least we were talking about reality shows last week, although I guess I always kind of try to squeeze it in somewhere. But you technically brought it up, so I'm sure that helped your list a little bit as well because we were just talking about reality shows. But I have The Real World. To me, it's like the OG. It's an MTV show that did start out legit. Like we get 6 people it's 5 or 6, and they get them to live in a house. They started in New York, and they did legit film them for like 4 or 5 months, and then they made a show. It's just about young people and from different backgrounds and how they relate, and then playing that out on TV because if you're a young person as well, you can relate to these same things. You could see yourself in different people. You could learn about people that you may not necessarily run into in your daily life, depending on what part of the country you live in. I feel like it's a pretty big deal, pretty revolutionary show. So yeah, The Real World is my number 3.
Great. My number 3, which I regret, it literally was just like, this is the only one I could think of for some reason. Selling Sunset. It's you familiar? They buy houses.
All right.
It's people buying usually they like holiday homes. Usually the British version depends. There's a lot of different versions, I think, but the British version would be a lot of Brits going to Spain or Portugal, basically somewhere where they're economically outweighing the population and sort of using the inherent inequalities in our globalized society to push the local population out of the housing market and plant their own little Union Jack instead. So I guess that's my number 3, Jim.
Yeah, I could tell the love you have for this show. I have heard of it.
It's one I have actually seen a fair bit of because my parents are always watching it when I'm back home in Sweden. So I've seen bits and pieces, and even despite my contempt or whatever, I'm still like, I wouldn't live there. Like you get drawn in fairly easily. So I guess I see the appeal.
Well, that's the fun of watching those shows, even if you're like poor and can't be a homeowner. Because you're like, I don't know if I'd make that choice. I think I'd go with the $600,000 home instead. Like, what is this? Like that type of shit. But Jacob's a homeowner. He's pushing out the local riffraff over in Ireland as well, like the Swedish invasion. So who is he to speak?
I'm holding up the tradition of my Viking forebears by coming to Ireland and shoving out the local populace. Do you have a number 2 for me, Jim?
I do. Survivor, one of the granddaddies of them all as well. And also a show that I wasn't really even into until fairly recently. I did watch the first season live as it aired. I think everyone, like, out of curiosity at the time, it was like such a phenom. And I mean, it's been a big show for a long time, but it's definitely kind of more for like the super fans these days, outside of like people like me that just kind of binge and fall back into it. But I mean, you know the deal. You get people, they're on an island, they start kind of lying and making alliances, and you want to make it to the end so you can win the $1 million. It's riveting television. They have physical challenges, they have puzzles, they have different games. Jeff Probst, the American host, amazing host. I love myself Jeff Probst. I listen to his podcast every now and then. I like when we can get Catty Jeff, where he kind of is catty to people and like talk shit almost. So Survivor, my number 2, baby.
Survivor, also known as the American Expedition Robinson, which is my number 2.
Excellent.
Which you will have heard last week as I went on and on about Swedish reality television and how it paved the way for many other international versions. So Expedition Robinson started in 1997 and featured people living on an island, doing challenges, all the stuff you know from Survivor, but they were all Swedish. And I watched a bunch of these seasons, as did everyone else in Sweden. It was a fully new concept. Obviously haven't seen it in years and years, but yeah, it still owns a little part of my brain, and that's why it's number 2.
It still airs too? They still put out new episodes or new seasons?
I looked this up last week, and I literally do not remember, but I believe they've had revivals and non-revivals, stuff like that. Let's see. Yeah, so it went until like 2011, then started up again. Yeah, it's definitely going. It's going.
Okay. And I mean, I'm sure people could guess this if you know a little bit about me, but my number 1 is The Challenge. Season 40 just premiered this past week. I was talking a little bit about episode 0 on our last podcast. Episode 1 did air. The Challenge 40. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about it and what you've been watching, but I mean, I guess I'm always talking about The Challenge. Like I had mentioned,
we all. I knew this was going to be your top one.
Like I had mentioned, it has this hint of nostalgia because these are people I kind of literally grew up with. You want to talk about I guess an early form of a parasocial relationship, like which people get with streamers now because you get to just hang out with them 24 hours a day. But like, you know, it's something I didn't watch for like over a decade, and then I started watching it. And I'm like, oh yeah, CT. I remember CT from when I was a kid. Now he's grown up like me. So I think that's one of the best parts of the challenge. It was one of the first shows to really, it was like a, it's a game show in a lot of ways, or like athletic show, but the thing that sets itself apart is that it does have repeat contestants, like over decades, that they keep coming back. And other networks are trying to do that more now. Like Netflix is trying to do a similar thing where they're taking their brand of reality and pulling from those shows and putting them on a new show, and then maybe they'll pop up on another show. But I feel like the challenge was one of the originals to do that. And
the challenge cinematic universe.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. So it is like such a weird way of, like, I guess, character development, for lack of a better term, because it's similar to, when you would pop in on Facebook and like someone you went to high school with, it's been a decade, and you're like, oh, they're doing this now, or oh, they're in jail now. All right, cool. So yeah, the challenge, I love it.
Great. And my number one, why it's a little reality television show known as På rymmen, which translates roughly to On the Lam. Let me tell you about the concept here, Jim. So every week, you have two pairs of contestants. They were on the run, trying to escape two trackers. And I won't go into the whole thing, but if you listen through our episode from last week, literally I spent about 20 minutes going on and on about this little piece of television history. It's definitely a weird one, and I talk about it loads last week, so go check that one out. And I have rewatched it recently. It's very cheesy, it's very dumb, very 90s, and it's right up my alley, and it's my number one, På rymmen, also from 1997. Now, I realized after the fact, Jim, do you have a line between game show and reality TV show? Are these two different things? Because if we're talking game show, like surely Jeopardy isn't one.
No,
right?
yeah.
Jeopardy's not a reality TV show. But Kitchen Nightmares, is that when they go into different kitchens? Or is that when they compete in like an enclosed setting? Does it matter to you?
Well, Hell's Kitchen is the one where they compete. Like, so you really start to blur the lines a bit. But you're right, because it's like, yeah, Jeopardy, no, I wouldn't consider that a reality show. But like Kitchen Nightmare, like when you started getting into stuff like Survivor or even The Challenge, where people are getting kind of like eliminated weekly, it starts to have more elements of, say, like a game show with a prize than, like, I mean, initially with something like The Real World, it wasn't like you got a prize at the end. It was just about capturing reality as best as you can when there's a camera around, but like trying to get real moments. But I mean, obviously, like Survivor is thought of as like the daddy of reality TV, and that's very much a game show in a lot of ways, or an athletic or like a competition more than it is about just capturing like a reality or real moments. So it does get a little, or even like something like British Bake Off or whatever. Like, is that considered a reality show?
That is the question I didn't have time to grapple with in the 30 seconds, because if it's within scope, then that is my top one. I love the Great British Bake Off, and might since I didn't get a chance to rave about it here, maybe that'll be the subject of a future why you should watch PowerPoint presentation as I explain to you the intricacies, because it's not one that you're into, right?
No, not really. I've never really seen it. I know like a friend of mine, Mike, really likes it. I guess I kind of maybe a line in the sand on what constitutes it, though, is like, do they bring in new contestants every week?
No, it is an elimination thing. You sort of become for each season, people drop off week to week till they find the best baker. They all have to be amateur bakers as well, so it's not professionals. It's all, and you learn a bit about their home life and stuff like that. So it's probably within the realm of reality TV. In which case, it's too late now. This is my rapid fire or top five. But
I'm surprised
would put the Great British Bake Off on there.
I actually thought it was going to be on your list because I know
I would have put it on there, but I panicked. And put Selling Sunset. This is what happens. This is why I hate this game that I came up with.
All right. So, yeah, moving on to the news here. Now, if there's one thing I love as much as reality shows, if you know anything about me, it's horror TV shows. And Friday the 13th, there's been rumors of not rumors, there's been an announcement of a prequel series for a while now. It's actually coming out from A24, which is kind of weird. A24 is kind of changing a bit. Like, I mean, I think it was announced not too long ago that they were kind of starting to branch their wings a bit and have more almost like not necessarily blockbusters, but whatever you would consider their brand of blockbusters. And I mean, you kind of recently saw that this year with the movie Civil War, where it's not the same as a Roland Emmerich disaster movie, like with this huge scale, you get to watch like the Statue of Liberty get torn apart or something, but it is like a post-America, like dystopia or whatever. But yeah, so Friday the 13th. Now, what's interesting about this is a few things. Is that, well, number one, initially when it was announced, Bryan Fuller was the showrunner. Bryan Fuller, you may know from Pushing Daisies, was a big show back in the day. I mean, I guess it only lasts like a season, but it had a pretty cult-like following online, or maybe it was a couple seasons. Dead Like Me from years and years ago on Showtime, but that was a great show. And of course,
Big Dead
Hannibal.
Like Me had me. I never saw Pushing Daisies, but big Dead Like Me fan.
That's one I've always thought about revisiting.
Yeah.
But that was definitely early in like the peak TV, because that was like early 2000s or to mid 2000s or something like that. But I love that show as well. He did work on American Gods, which I never watched. Didn't you watch that?
I watched the first season, and I read the book, obviously before then. But it's a very it was pretty good, but it's also a very difficult to adapt kind of book, so it didn't really grip me in the TV show format, to be honest.
And then he's also co-creator of Hannibal, which, you know, all the TV heads out there. Hannibal was, although I don't think I even finished it though, but it was one of those shows where you're constantly like, I can't believe this is on network TV, because between, like, there's a lot of artistry and just the way it was shot and the way it looked, but also it was very, very gory and kind of and violent. But it was just handled in such a, I don't know, for lack of a better word, pretentious way that they allowed it, I guess.
That A24 kind of way, if you will.
Yes. But he was announced, it was ordered to series in 2022, and Bryan Fuller was announced as the showrunner. But then about 3 months ago, he tweeted, you know, for reasons beyond our control, A24 has elected to go a different way with this material. We hope the final product will be something Friday the 13th fans all over the world will enjoy. Now, the other level of this as well is that if you're a horror person at all, or if you're a Friday the 13th fan, you may be aware that there's been, I think it's spanned like at least 5 to 10 years. There's been a rights issue. It's like the whole property itself has been caught up in court. I mean, they released that video game, but also that one of the main reasons why that video game died was because of this fight that was going on between Victor Miller, who I believe wrote the original script, and then Sean Cunningham was the producer. Producer, director, something like that. Because the way it worked out, or maybe I have that reversed. Because the way it started,
you're correct. I'm looking at it now.
Okay, because I think Sean Cunningham, it's so funny because the origin of this is that John Carpenter put out Halloween, you know, famously one of the greatest slashers ever made. And basically, Sean Cunningham called up Victor Miller to hire him to write it. And he's like, look, we want to rip that off. We want to make our own Halloween. And so the argument was kind of like, hey, you were a writer for hire. You don't own this. And then he was saying, well, I brought all like X, Y, and Z, these elements to this of like, you didn't really have an idea. I think the courts ended up siding with Victor Miller as far as the original movie is concerned. So that first script. Now, if you know anything about Friday the 13th, that makes it interesting because Jason Voorhees is in that script, but he's not technically the killer in it. His mother is, spoiler alert. So the iconic Jason with the hockey mask and all that is until Friday the 13th, part 3. So there's this bizarre, like, who owns what. New Line Cinema owns, like, the name Friday the 13th. They own Jason Voorhees. They own Crystal Lake. And Victor Miller owns, like, the story of the original movie in the U.S., and Sean Cunningham owns like the worldwide rights. So it's such a murky thing where with this prequel series, people don't really know what that's going to look like. But initially, Bryan Fuller was saying like, no, we're going to have Jason in it. Like, we're going to do this and that. So it sounded exciting, but I don't know. I don't know if they're going to go a route of like, I mean, I guess they can't do an anthology thing where it's going to be not anything to do with Jason Voorhees because no one wants to watch that shit. I remember as a kid, I think there was like a Freddy's Nightmare show, and I loved Freddy Krueger. And when I watched it, like Freddy was barely on it, and I was so annoyed. But anyways, to get to the news at hand is that Brad Caleb Kane is the new creator showrunner. He had previously worked on Tokyo Vice, Fringe, Black Sails, and Warrior. Fringe I'd watch. I haven't watched any of those other shows. And I believe Victor Miller is on as a producer of this. So I'm still holding out hope because I loved the Chucky show. All the Chucky show had Victor Mancini, the original creator of Chucky, was the showrunner, the writer. So I think it kept that like quality and it felt like it like fit. It's hard to say if this is just going to be another cash-in prequel thing or if it's going to be something interesting and fun to watch. So that's a long way to say that they have a prequel series coming out.
Yeah, the working title or maybe the full title is Crystal Lake, right? And it is it's full prequel vibes. So yeah, take from that what you will. I was looking at Brad Caleb Kane's filmography just now, and I'm a big fan of Tokyo Vice, as you know, and I guess the rest I'm not too familiar with, but apparently he appears in season 3, episode 20 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer as Tucker Wells, the prom episode. And his singing voice is in season 4, episode 17, for some reason. So yeah, just little bits and pieces. He's clearly appeared here and there, mostly singing, I guess.
Dude,
but
you know what?
Just a little. Yeah.
You know what's great about him being Tucker Wells is that in season 6 with the nerd arch nemesis it's Tucker's brother is the other character, because you know how they have like Jonathan and I forget the other guy's name, but the other guy's just
Andrew.
known as Andrew is just Tucker's brother. Like that's kind of the joke, is that we never saw him on the show before, like we saw the other guys. So that's actually kind of a fun little factoid. That's pretty cool.
And he's I guess he must be like a singer, because he's also like Jonathan, you know, the Jonathan episode of Buffy, the superstar. He is Jonathan's singing voice when he's doing like his Frank Sinatra singing or whatever it is he does. Apparently Brad Kane is the voice of that. So, you know, if that's not a pedigree showing you can do a good prequel to Friday the 13th, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I mean, I assume I never watched. I assume you didn't watch this either. Bates Motel. That was a show like a couple years ago about like, you know, young Norman Bates and his mother or something.
No, of course I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch. I've heard, you know, some good things, some mixed things, whatever. So I assume with this, there we'll see a lot of like Jason's mom if it's kind of prequel-y stuff. Which, I mean, that could be good or bad, but I mean, we want to see fucking hockey mask Jason, dude. Like, bring us zombie Jason. Have you ever seen Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives?
I have not.
It's so good. It's the best one, in my opinion. It's my fave.
Great. I'm sorry to keep going on about this, but he's the fucking voice of Aladdin, but just the singing parts, like literally in Aladdin, 1992, he sings just a little snack, guys. It's him. It's fucking Brad Kane is the voice of Aladdin in that and The Return of Jafar and Aladdin and the King of Thieves. So, and he's in
that
Starship
actually
Troopers.
Is dope, because when you said that, I expected it to be like, oh, you know, the sequels or like.
That's what I thought. I was scrolling up literally, and I was like, "Oh yeah, he's in the VHS one." No, he's in literally. He's the voice of Aladdin. But anyway,
that's a pretty dope career though. To being on like cool shows and doing cool Disney musicals, and then also like writing for pretty well regarded shows. I mean, Tokyo Vice, I've heard a lot of good things about, like from you especially. Fringe was good. So I'm rooting for him even more for this Friday the 13th prequel series.
Yeah. Well, moving us right along to another piece of news. I suppose it's kind of mostly just a jumping off point for us to discuss something we'd like to chat about. A few people involved in the TV show Scrubs have been chatting about, is this a thing we should be bringing back or not? Now, Zach Braff was on a podcast with, as you pointed out to me, the guy who plays Lex Luthor in Smallville. Is that right?
Michael Rosenbaum. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was on this podcast, and one of the things that came up chatting about this was basically, they were saying, like, when we sign up to do these shows, most of the discussion seemed to be about how exhausting it was, because, as you can imagine, quite a lot involved in making a TV show like Scrubs, a single camera comedy like that. It's on location a lot. It's a lot of hard work, and what Zach had to say about it now was basically like, when we signed up to do our shows, they put you under pretty insane contracts of like 7 years, which I wouldn't do. But some sort of talk of a limited thing. You're basically saying, do you want to get the gang back together and fucking laugh your ass off with some of your best friends and get paid well? He's saying he'd be open to that. And like reminiscing about the laughs and everything. Now, that's not necessarily news on its own, but I have also an interview here with Bill Lawrence talking about this. Now, the headline from Variety is, Bill Lawrence admits he teased the Scrubs reunion so you'd stop asking about Ted Lasso. And then it
That's
says,
funny.
but now it might actually happen. So, I mean, which is hyperbole, to be honest.
Yeah.
But looking at what he's talking about here, he said, that's the wrong part. Yeah, so if you're asking about Ted Lasso, there's no movement on that front. The best thing about questions about the future of Ted Lasso is that it replaced for a second having to talk about whether or not Scrubs was going to be rebooted. But he also admitted that he's recently flipped on this, saying, the reason that I accidentally said, yeah, I think I'm going to figure this out in the next 6 months about Scrubs recently was because I just wanted to stop talking about the Ted Lasso thing. It's fascinating to me, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, he's just saying loads of stuff, isn't he?
Well,
blah,
I mean,
blah.
so does he talk about, are people clamoring for a Cougar Town revival? No, he doesn't bring that up at all.
Apparently it's not, it doesn't come up as much, but I think, so, he's talking about how, like, the passion that Scrubs fans have. He mentions the podcast, Fake Doctors, Real Friends, which we review on the podcast about television, which you can find at showswhichyouknow.com. Talks about Zach and Donald being such great friends and still making things together. Okay. The business part of it can always get mucked up, but I'm super hopeful. It would be fun to do because we want an excuse to hang out with each other, but because not just because we want an excuse to hang out with each other, but because it'd be fun to do creatively. You don't want to just mail it in, but it would be interesting to see those characters older and see what new young kids look like in medicine right now, because it is a heroic profession and no one's doing it to get rich. Yeah, a lot of talking to get to. Basically, people are talking about it. I guess people have always talked about it. It's one of those shows that's sort of a cult classic, but it's one that we both love as well. So, what's your take on this? Would you be open to an actual Scrubs reboot or reboot-quel or something of the sort?
I definitely would. I mean, I love Scrubs. And yeah, kind of like how he mentioned, I think it comes up a lot because between Zach and Donald having their podcast together and they're actively in advertisements here in the States, like together, like they're, what is it, T-Mobile or something. They're always doing fun stuff. And it's very much, you know, JD and Turk. And you're like, oh yeah, JD and Turk. I love JD and Turk. Let's hang out with them again. The only thing that kind of gave me pause though is reading his quote. You were just reading his quote and he mentioned like seeing them older and seeing them interact with younger doctors. It reminded me of season 9 of Scrubs when they kind of did do that. Like, I get why they did that, because especially hearing Zach Braff's recent quotes on the show and how exhausting it became by the 9th season, like they definitely tried to pivot a bit where like you'd still have JD and Turk and Dr. Cox and stuff, but they were trying to introduce like a new batch of interns or a new cast, and it just was very unsuccessful. And they were trying to give like our mainstays more of a break. They wouldn't have to be in every single episode, every single scene. They got to like be kind of guest stars, still get to show up. But I don't really remember specifics. I just remember being abysmal and torturous to watch. So having flashes of that, I'm like, oh shit, they almost kind of already did this and it wasn't good. But maybe now that was because they were attempting to do it just coming off of a regular season of the show. It's tough to have a show and then try to just change it in a following season. It's like, this is not the characters I signed up for. At least now that we've had some time like apart, I think you could maybe have a better version of that. So, but that's the only thing that made me second guess, like, uh-oh. But yeah, and I know this makes me a hypocrite because like almost every revival, I'm like, oh Jesus, here we go. We don't need to see how many kids fucking Dexter has now. And
I was just about to reference Dexter and say, like, yeah, like, do we really need another like reboot? And as you said, Scrubs went on for so long that they literally did those things. They basically had a nostalgic show about Scrubs. Sort of Scrubs reunion that was within the show Scrubs, because they got to a point where it had a satisfying ending. It had already gone on maybe a bit longer than it should, but they pulled it all together. They ended it. It would be as if Community came back and like, right, we're doing season 7, and you're like, what do you mean? Aren't you supposed to make a movie and fucking call it a day? And we had like, here's the next generation. Here's Scrubs Med School or whatever it was called, or like the new interns, and they were all boring. Like they were not all Zach Braff, and you know they didn't have that it factor, and they weren't written that well. So I can't. The weird thing about Scrubs potentially coming back is it feels like it was such an influential show, but it's a type of TV that doesn't feel like it gets made at all anymore. You know, setting aside the amount of episodes, it's still just the style of it, the way it's put together, like. I don't know. It would be. Would it not turn out to be something like the Arrested Development reboot on Netflix or something, where they just do something completely different and totally fuck it up? That's kind of the sense I get, because I feel like would you even make 20-minute episodes that have like a nice dramatic arc and are about different things, or would you do one season that has one overarching Scrub story and make it shit? I don't know. I feel like. I feel hesitant. Maybe we just leave it alone. Maybe we should just rewatch Scrubs. Maybe that's what we all need to do.
Yeah. We should just listen to Fake Doctors, Real Friends podcast and just leave it at that, and watch their commercials and be like, remember what's once was. But yeah, I guess that's all this isn't really news. I was going to say it's all we have for news, but just talking about this reminded me that they did release a photo of the Australian Office reboot. This is kind of neither here nor there. It's like a female-led and I know we're in the process. We had talked a couple weeks ago about how the U.S. is in process of like doing their reboot as well. Okay, yeah, here, Office Australia adaptation. Actually, did they even have they must have had one back in the day as well. I'm not sure.
So I've just gone to a list of versions of The Office because I had the same thought, and I was like, surely that already existed. But as far as I see, for Australia, they never actually had their own version previously. So, which is weird because there are 1, 2, 3, 4. Like Sweden had one, South Africa, Saudi Arabia has their own version of The Office. Poland, Israel, India, Greece, Germany, France, Finland. Chile has their own La Office. Like, there are many different versions of The Office out there, but I guess Australia hasn't made one yet. And the thing about it is, people who watch the original The Office and The Office US all speak English. So maybe this is a chance to kind of have your cake and eat it too. Do like, this is the Australian version, mate. But it's kind of like a new thing. I guess that would be maybe why people are excited about it. Plus the fact that it's going on Prime, right? So it will actually be accessible everywhere. Unlike, say, the Swedish The Office, which was just on Swedish television and isn't accessible anywhere else. And why would anyone outside the country watch it, you know?
Yeah. It looks like Felicity Ward is starring as the first female led Office, and she plays Hannah Howard. She's also on that Time Bandits show, and looks like she was in the in-between.
You mean the first after Leslie Knope, season 1 of Parks and Rec? Am I right?
Yeah,
which was basically just The Office, huh?
She was also in the In-Betweeners too. Now, they did 2 movies of the In-Betweeners? Apparently,
apparently, I feel like maybe there's more than that, but yeah, I
Oh.
only watched the first of the movies. Good show though. If for those who haven't seen it.
I remember we watched the first season of that, right? Like back in the day.
Yes, that's right. Through the OG shows, which you know.
Yes, yeah. But I mean, yeah, I guess it's just like it doesn't really matter. It just reminded me of it's talking about like bringing back Scrubs. I was like, oh yeah, they're still doing The Office, or at least they're rolling out new versions of The Office. So that's premiering in October.
All right. Well, I'm sure it'll be exciting and it'll be awkward, and that's what we want.
Which brings us
from
to
The Office.
What TV shows have you been watching? Tell me, I gotta know.
Jacob, you said you only had like one thing you watched.
Yeah, pretty much one thing.
All right, I have two things. I'll say one.
You
Well,
wanna
I have three technically, but I already talked about the challenge. You know, I watched the challenge, season 40, episode 1. A little bit of a letdown because they didn't even announce who's going into elimination yet. They did the whole cliffhanger bullshit. But I did. I'm not sure if you watched this yet or not. We were talking about checking it out, but I did watch the first episode of American Godfathers, The Five Families, which is a History Channel mini-series. It was, I think, a 3-night event. I think all 3 episodes have already aired. It was like last week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. It's pretty, it's good. It's well done. I mean, I'm sure if you're a person that is like already well versed in like the history of the mafia, it's probably covering stuff you already know. And even though I love mob movies, I never dug too much into the actual stories, so there was some stuff that I didn't know a lot about. There's names and things I've heard of. Just even in Sopranos, they'll have passing reference to some of these things. Or when we discussed The Godfather, we saw how like some of the things in the Godfather series were obviously inspired by some of these real things. But it starts out basically with, you know, the birth of the initial like mafia in like Sicily, and then how that kind of spread into when Italians are immigrating to America, and initially starting with like the boss of bosses, but that changed, and like Lucky Luciano brought the commission and built the Five Families. And Michael Imperioli, who plays Christopher Moltisanti on The Sopranos, is the narrator. It's a lot of talking heads as well, just different like authors. They bring in that I forget his name, like Franchise. He's like this YouTube guy that's always talking about the mob, but he's kind of corny. We saw him in that other Netflix documentary.
I was going to ask, does it feel like your kind of standard Netflix documentary? I know it's the History Channel, but like, I'm just trying to picture it here. Does it, because Netflix documentaries are just kind of, they're well put together, but they're also kind of like follow a template, you know?
Yeah, it's somewhat, definitely. Like, you know, you'll have the standard kind of out of focus reenactment as they're talking about something. You'll just see, you know, so then I'm walking across the bridge. So you'll see a guy like toss a gun and be walking across the bridge, like that type of shit. Intercut with like, you know, real historic archival footage of, you know, they get a lot into some of the Senate hearings, which they cover a bit in like Godfather 2. I mean, it is really interesting of how like seemingly clueless the whole like the world at Wide was to how the inner workings were of the mafia, and how they were trying to really figure stuff out because of Omerta, the Code of Silence. And then they get into like by the end of the first episode, I think his name's Velaki. He's like one of the first guys to Joseph Velaki. He is just, it's so funny because he's just afraid they're gonna kill him, to the point like he's in prison. And he's in the same prison as his boss, and he assumes they're gonna kill him. At one point, he's just walking in the yard, and a guy's coming up to him, and he starts hitting him with a pipe, and he kills him. And it was just some guy, like it wasn't. Yeah. And so at that point, he's like, "Well, I want protection." So he's one of the first guys to break Omerta. And he was on TV at like these Senate hearings or the congressional hearings, going over the rules and laying out the Five Families. And it's funny how a documentary like this is how like you have to, you're showing the reality, and also obviously crime is bad and stuff like that. But when you have Michael Imperioli narrating it, there's an element of like, this piece of shit, how could he? How can he portray us? You start to feel like you're also in the Five Families. They get into like Joey Gallo and his brother. They were like the crazy guys that tried to like kidnap their own boss, and you get echoes of The Sopranos, because you see how even back then what Tony Soprano would think of as the good old days, the young guys were messing it up, because you had the Five Families that had these specific rules that everyone abided by. You get approval. This is a friend of ours. This is a made guy. You keep it in the family. You never leave this you never leave this thing. But then you have young guys that are like, fuck this. I'm going to kill this guy because I want more money and I want more territory. And it's fun to watch. If you're into mob movies and stuff like that, it's obviously drier because it's real history. It shows .com. But it's interesting to see the backbone of everything. I've only watched the first. There are 2 other episodes. I think they kind of go up through, I don't know if they get to present day, but like through probably through maybe Goodfellas era at least.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. Back in 2020, in the first season of our podcast, Real History, we talked a lot about the American Mafia on an episode about The Irishman. If anyone remembers the film The Irishman at this stage, we basically covered all the same, like sort of the origins of the American Mafia, and that's an episode of Real History that I believe is also on our Cut to Black feed, on our Sopranos podcast feed, because we were like, there's overlap here. This is like stuff you need to know, like the basics. So I definitely need to check this one out, and it's something I've considered digging a bit more into myself, and like maybe making some sort of YouTube history video on the history of the Mafia. But the problem is the people who are into it are so into it. So you can't make you can make a documentary like this and put it on TV because it's like for general audiences. But if you put something like this on YouTube, you better fucking have a channel fully dedicated to this. You better be really read up on it and really like deep into it. Because you have people who dedicate their lives to this shit. So but it sounds very interesting. I'll have to check it out, and we'll have to see how it goes with the parts 2 and 3 as well. Like if it holds up, if it keeps the interest going.
Yeah, because I think at this point through episode 1, I mean, we start through like the early 1900s, and we're kind of up through about 1970 almost. So yeah, I have to see kind of where it goes as we're starting to get into how like, initially like drugs were a thing that was off limits, but of course that slowly, as people start to see there's money there, that slowly starts to become more and more of a thing. And then how, the authorities are going to react to that, and how violence starts to amp up. So, I mean, it's always just interesting to watch, but so far so good.
What TV shows have you been watching? Tell me, I gotta know.
Jacob, what have you been watching?
Well, what is a gangster? What's another word for a gangster? Maybe a vandal. Or sorry, Godfather, was it? American Godfathers? What's a Godfather if not a vandal?
Ooh.
What I've been watching is American Vandal Season 1. Or rewatching, of course. A show that came out as far back as 2017 now.
Wow.
If you're not familiar, this is a mockumentary TV show. The tagline of which was "Who drew the dicks?" It's basically about a true crime investigation that takes place at a high school. The show you're watching is made in universe by high school students who are investigating this act of vandalism where someone spray painted 27 dicks on the cars of all of the teachers and faculty. So they're kind of going in depth because one charismatic stoner loser guy has been expelled from the school because he has been framed in the view of the mockumentary makers. So they're investigating this, and the comedy of it comes from the fact that it's sort of a very high production value thing that they're making these high school students about a very silly topic, and then over time throughout the season you're like, this is actually like important. This is about this kid's life. It's going to go totally off the rails. Was he actually framed? And it actually gets into the morality of these types of true crime shows and things like that, because the characters making the show, they're sort of exploiting people, revealing people's secrets willy-nilly, and caring so much more about making a good movie and a good series. And it also comments on the fact of how these things can change reality, because throughout the series they start posting this show, and the people in the high school start reacting to the fact that it's going viral online. It's just like something that I think, did we discuss this back in the day? I feel
we
like
did.
we have an episode on this at showswhatyouknow.com, but yeah, it's just something I rewatched, and it's funny how like it fully holds up. First of all, very, very strong show still, but it's also interesting how much of it is like so of its time as well, you know, going back to 2017, which is now a number of years ago, because that's already commenting on tropes that at that stage had been around for a while, sort of in the documentary format. So yeah, obviously something that me and Jim were always going to like, because it's sort of playing with meta commentary and sort of playing with the medium while just being generally funny. So yeah, American Vandal still definitely holds up.
I loved this show, and actually, now that I would love to rewatch this, because I don't remember even like how the mystery plays out, but I love these guys because I think that it's also, I mean, season 2 is also great, and I believe it's the same people that also made The Gamer. It's a very similar show, or it's just called Gamer, I think, or Gamers or something. Shit, what is that called? Now I'm spacing because I feel like I'm messing up. But like Dan Peralt and Tony Yacenda, I believe. Because yes, they make these really funny, absurd mockumentaries that are slick and play just the same as like a Netflix documentary, but they also have a lot of heart. Like the biggest thing that I remember came out, Players, I think it might be the name of the show.
Yes.
I was thinking of Players. It was about esports. But the heart really goes through with these characters. Like they nail the emotional parts just as well as having such silly things about like who drew the dicks. And it's funny throughout, and the characters are really fun to watch. And it, even though it's clearly like a show, like the moments feel real. Like it uses its format really well. Like it doesn't feel like a cheat. Like something like The Office, obviously it's funny, it's a good show, whatever, but it becomes a cheat. I mean, yeah, I guess either way, because they do it for so long, but not, I don't feel like this show ever like is just using the format only for laughs. Like it kind of plays it as straight as it can, and that becomes part of the comedy. So I'm really glad you brought it up, because I feel like I really want to rewatch this now. So
yeah, the thing at the end was, I was like, oh, like I remembered liking this, and I remember it like it kind of gets real. Like I remember getting really involved in the story, but I did not realize that I was going to be there like at the end of the last episode with tears in my eyes. Not quite spilling down my cheeks, but definitely welling up, you know? There's a part where Dylan, the subject of the documentary, this is a very, very minor spoiler, it doesn't really tell you anything, but there's a point where Dylan watches the documentary, and I was tearing up, man. That was intense. That was so good, so well put together. Great show. And thank you for reminding me of Players as well, a 2022 show that they made about esports people. I just searched it because I wanted and expected there to be a Players season 2 by now, and Players is one of multiple shows that have just sort of been removed from Paramount Plus. So it's officially been cancelled, removed, sort of for the ahead of the Showtime merger. This is news from back in 2023. So yeah, it seems to be gone. I did find in more positive news, I also found an article from just last month talking about how the rights for American Vandal have now sort of reverted back to CBS Studios that produced it. So it's a Netflix show, right? It's available on Netflix, but it seems that sort of the rights for making more of this has gone back to CBS Studios, and CBS Studios president hinted at a potential sort of opportunity to maybe bring some life back into American Vandal, and the creators have said that they know what the third season would be, and saying it's somewhat evergreen as well, which I would agree with, because these are real life people. Well, sorry, the characters making the mockumentaries could just be older, right? And checking in on them wherever they're at, and whatever documentary they're making at that time, I trust the creators to make something interesting, even if it's kind of not like Scrubs at all, where Scrubs was like a finished thing, where this is like an interesting format that I would trust them to do something fun with. And I think they could do that now. I think they could do that 5 years from now, and I'd watch it either way.
Yeah, no, I'm in complete agreement, and it's a travesty what happened to Players. The tough thing with Players, though, too, like SEO wise, that's really hard to try to sell as a show. But Players, if you're interested in anything we're talking about, both seasons of American Vandal and definitely Players. Players keeps that same like format, and it keeps the same quality. It's just as good. So.
I'm so sorry. I'm just so annoyed realizing this now as we're talking, because, like, Players on February 1st, 2023 was just removed from Paramount Plus. I have to assume legally there's no way to watch Players. So go pirate Players.
Yeah, go pirate it.
SEO wise, it might be a bit hard. You'll find other shit. But, it came out in 2022. That should help.
Yeah.
What TV shows have you been watching? Tell me, I gotta know.
Jacob, this is hot off the presses. I could be at the ground floor here. I don't know if this is going to take off like the other show did, but this show just premiered last night on HBO, or on Max, the one to watch for HBO. It's the follow-up docuseries from the director of Tiger King. This is called Chimp Crazy, and I already love it. It's if you watch Tiger King, obviously this guy kind of specializes in people that are like obsessed with exotic pets. Well, he's kind of taken his point of view, and he's looking at people that take chimpanzees as pets. And at first, like when I first heard that, this guy's trying to do another documentary, like I don't think time has been kind to Tiger King. Like we all kind of chalk that up as being, COVID crazy, and we just all like launched on a thing. But I'm with this show. Like it's, we have these again, some larger than life characters. The main woman that we've seen, at least through this first episode, is Tanya Haddix. But basically it's around, these people that want to take chimps in as pets for whatever reason. I guess Missouri is a big state here where they have very limited laws around like what you can, like what you have to do to have exotic pets. Like they just kind of allow it. And technically where I live in North Las Vegas. There are places here that are grandfathered in that have exotic pets as well. Like I don't know if it's dating back to the days of like shows down on the strip where you'd have to bring your tiger or whatever. Like I'm sure that's where some of it comes from. Because it was about a decade ago, but there was a point where like someone's tiger got loose one year, or I think there are people that have chimpanzees over here as well. But it's interesting.
Siegfried and Roy. I feel like I saw something about this on The Simpsons or something. Or no?
Yeah, it might have been. But this show gets into like I don't think it. I mean, it's obviously you don't have as crazy as a character as who was the Tiger King again? I'm spacing on his name. Joe, fucking animal, whatever his name.
Johnny Mnemonic.
Joe Exotic. That's what it was. Joe Exotic.
Yeah.
But like it's kind of close, and in a way, at least so far, I don't feel like the lady is villainized that much. Like I kind of have, I have some sympathy for her, even though like I feel like she really cares about these chimps, and she feels like she's doing the right thing, but she's just kind of misguided. At least the way the documentary pitches it is because she talks a lot about her kids and how her kids grew up, and when you have a baby, they're your kid grows up, and then the idea is that they leave the nest, and then they make friends, and they become their own person in the world. And she mentions throughout this that like with a chimp they can't really do that. Like she kind of loves that she gets to have like a child forever. And like, I can't help but just feel bad. Like it just kind of sounds bad. But it's also fun that she's just like tossing a Powerade to a chimpanzee. And it's so cool seeing a chimpanzee grab a Powerade, twist the top off, and start chugging it down. But chimpanzees eating Happy Meals and McDonald's and shit. But I mean, I'm jumping around a bit. Like they get into kind of this idea, like even going back into like the 60s or 70s, this was like a weird thing that like this company would be like, oh, you want to have like a chimpanzee birthday party? And they like bring a chimp over to your kid's house and like he'd wear a party hat. And I mean, we know now, especially there's that famous chimp attack from about 15 years ago, Charlotte Nash, which it looks like they're going to get into in the next episode. This is a weekly thing. There's only one episode so far. It looks like they're going to get into that a bit in the next episode. But it kind of follows the paths of that and how people get obsessed with these exotic pets and how that plays out between them trying to build what they consider as a sanctuary, but clearly it's like these prisons where these poor animals are like stuck in a cage eating McDonald's all day. And also how it ties into, some of them are trained, whether it be, obviously a lot of these people have like weird circus or clown histories where there was part of a carnival or a traveling circus where you'd bring these animals out to do tricks. But that also extends into, you would hire them out for movies. There are movies where, a monkey plays a butler, so who do you got to hire?
Winston does this and that, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that these people made money that way, and they also made money like selling baby chimps as pets. And don't get me wrong, obviously a baby chimp is super cute. Like it's adorable. It's like a little baby's wearing a diaper, but then all of a sudden it grows up and it's like 300 pounds of pure muscle, and he's a wild animal. But you're seeing footage of like
I have a Rottweiler. It's already a lot. I can only imagine the And she was also very small and cute when she was born, and now she's big and cute, but also very big, and very strong.
Yeah,
and she's a dog still, So I can only imagine.
Well, even like when they're showing these birthday parties, you're seeing footage of like people holding their baby and then just like giving the baby to the chimp, and you're like, that is so fucking dangerous. Like, what are you doing? And I assume those people at the time just figure like, oh, the trainers are here. Like nothing bad could happen.
They're just people. They're just folks who have been grandfathered in.
But I know I'm jumping around a lot, but it's a very engaging first episode where we get into kind of the history of this specific version of exotic pets. We get into this main character and her ties to who was thought of as one of the main, like, I mean, breeder's not the right word, but she was like the main contact where someone was, if you were looking to buy a chimp as a pet, you would go to this lady. And even how it ties into how this director here, was it Eric Good? Eric Good.
Yeah.
He's even reckoning with the celebrity now of Tiger King, because the reason why he was involved, or not involved, but like why he had access with Tiger King, is he's been a guy in these communities for a long time, just as part of animals, exotic animals. But now they know him as the Tiger King guy. So we get an element of where he actually has to hire someone else to be like a proxy director to try to get in to speak to some of these people, because they won't talk to him. And even like it gets through some of these real court cases and how PETA gets involved, and actor Alan Cummings, who played Nightcrawler in X-Men 2, and he's also the host of The Traitors. He's like personally involved with PETA in regards to one of the like in general, but also in this case in regards to one of the chimpanzees, because he like made a movie with them and kind of had like a bond. Like he realized there was a bond, like showing up to set and seeing a chimp that was like actually excited to see him, like to the point he kept like looking at his trainer. And then his trainer would be like, yeah, you can go. And he'd like run and jump in his arms. And he's like, this is such a sweet, like loving creature. And it's so funny, like they would tell him, it's the thing you tell a little kid when like their dog passes away. They're like, oh no, he went and retired to Boca, whatever. And it's like the chimp isn't dead, but like no, he finds out he's just living in a cell. Like once they're past 5 years old, they're huge. They're not the cute chimps in movies anymore. He's just living miserable in a cell. So
he's off being in Rise of the Planet of the Apes in real life.
Yeah, exactly. So we get into like the PETA battle and how this plays out and what's going on as they're trying to get these chimps away from these current owners. A lot of good stuff so far. I highly recommend it.
This sounds great, Jim. This, as you said with Tiger King, it feels in retrospect like we were all caught up in the moment and Tiger King wasn't actually that great. But I want to be caught up in the moment again. And this is a new thing with which I can do that. And the name, the concept, everything you told me, it's like it was AI generated or like generated in a boardroom of like, how can we cash in on Tiger King? We made a limited series and that was shit. We have no idea where to go from here. Let's do a chimp show. Sounds fantastic. I got to check it out. And yeah, can you believe that they made an actual like a fictional version called Joe versus Carol that was starring Kate McKinnon, that was like a fictionalized version of Tiger King when the whole point was this is real life. But anyway, that's an aside. Hopefully Chimp Crazy will go similarly viral and we'll see the live action version of Chimp Crazy in 5 years' time.
Yeah, I think you should watch this week, and then we should both try to watch episode 2 for next week, so we could discuss it a little bit more. I mean, I don't know if this is going to take off like Tiger King did, but I do think it's well worth a watch because it's just super interesting. And again, I kind of like that this main character, Tanya Haddix, like I do think people would probably think she's kind of a monster, but I have a lot of sympathy for her. I honestly do feel like she thinks she's doing the right thing and she really cares about these chimpanzees, but like clearly they need to be in a better environment. But I guess we'll see how that plays out because there's more episodes. Maybe she does do some more ghoulish things as we go. But so far, so good.
Screw Shows What You Know. We are now the Chimp Cast. Check in every week as we talk about Chimp Crazy. What, you want to hear about Rings of Power? Get the fuck out of here. We're talking monkeys, baby. Come back next week for more of that.
And also if you want to reach out to us, you can hit us up at showswhatyouknow@gmail.com. You can also find us on TikTok, Shows What You Know. And of course, find our other shows at showswhatyouKnow.com.
Yes, very good. YouTube.com/showswhatyouKnow. All the URLs. We're on Twitter. We're on all the things. You can find us. We trust you. But I think for now, that's it. That's it. Switch the TV off. We're still got to workshop our ending there, but I think we're just say bye. We are Shows What You Know. We'll always watch TV. And if you think we can't, we'll watch more and you'll see. That's why the people of the web believe in Jim from Las Vegas and Jacob from Sweden.